Hey, it's Andy Yanez. You're watching and or listening to another episode of Let's Rage Coogs presented by the Saxenian Family. Once again, this big shout out to the Saxenian Family who has signed on to be the primary sponsor for Let's Rage Coogs, carrying us through the American Athletic Conference tournament. And we are coming off the heels. This was the first game for the Houston Cougars as the number one team in the entire country in both the AP and coaches poll, and boy, did they look like the number one team in the country. They absolutely dominated Norfolk State from the beginning. I mean, Tremont Mark hit his first three, and it was a wire victory for the Cougars. Marcus Sasser led all scores. He had 25 points, not 15 points, like the ticker says right there. He really got it going from 3-point range. Houston's offense overall shot the ball lights out. They ended up hitting 17 threes on the night. They were 38 to 66 overall from the field, 57.6% shooting from the field. And I think most importantly, they had 38 field goals. 26 of those 38 made field goals came off assists, which is something that Kelvin Sampson talked about after the game. But before we get into any specifics, Da'Yon, Kris, I'm going to toss it over to you guys. How are you doing?
Doing great, man. Dan, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great, man. With family.
Great. The win was expected. One big key, as Andy touched on, was the ball movement and player movement was different and better than it was Saturday against Kent State. Practice time helped. Healthy players helped. We didn't know about the illness issue that the team faced was going through last week until Coach mentioned it yesterday in his media session with us. So that was something, but he was not taking anything away from Kent State and their performance and their effort. But healthy Cougars, more practice time for the Cougars helped, and Norfolk State was at the wrong spot at the wrong time. The Cougs make 17 threes, shoot 50% from three. They're going to be very, very, very hard to beat against anybody. 152, Cougs 7-0. Let's talk about it.
And it's crazy because Coach Sampson said after the last game that our next game we can make every shot, and they almost just did that. That's what I was thinking as I was watching that game.
So what do you think? And we already got Joe Mendez and Sean joining us on YouTube, and everybody's watching on Twitter as well, on Paul Summer Jam and Andy's Twitter accounts. But it's the first game after being ranked number one in the country. Dan, I haven't talked to you since it was official. So have you had a chance to stick out your chest to anybody talking junk to you that the Cougs are number one in the country?
Nah, no one has said nothing yet. They kind of saying we haven't played anyone, but well, I'm glad we put up a statement win today after coming back how we played last week. This was much needed, and finally Marcus started hitting his jumper. He's been playing well all year, but it's been primarily off the dribble because the three wasn't falling. So this game, he finally got in the rhythm and finally started knocking down the threes that he couldn't miss. And so, really, everyone had it going today. And so, it was really good to see them start knocking down them jumpers. If they can make jumpers like you said, like that, Kris, at that rate, it was definitely gonna be hard to beat for
And,
sure.
and, and let me say this, Eddie. I don't know if you're going to play the clip or not, but Ryan Elvin, everybody played well tonight. Ryan Elvin came in 5 minutes, scored, rebound, steal. But Coach Sampson said he said it, I think, for everybody, media fans as well. Ryan Elvin is a basketball player. He's not a novelty. Okay, he competes with the guys. He makes Marcus and Jamal better in practice. Now, a couple of years ago, Ryan has improved his game from the time as a freshman to now. So that's salute to him and his work ethic. He's gotten stronger, you know. So kudos to him. He's not just a novelty. Yes, the fans are chanting Elvin, Elvin, all those things, down the stretch of the game. But Coach Sampson wanted to let all of us know Ryan can play basketball. He's a good player. Okay, he's not in the rotation, but he's a good player. Just want to put that out there.
Absolutely, couldn't have said it myself any better myself. Just because of, again, every time he touches the ball, the crowd erupts, and they, like Sampson mentioned it, they do kind of act a little bit like I don't know. They make it a special emphasis when it's not needed. And like you said, he's a great basketball player, but it's always good to see him do well. But before we go forward and hear what Kelvin Sampson have to say after Houston's big win over Norfolk State, I do want to give a shout out to first and foremost the Saxenian family for being the primary sponsor of Let's Rage Coogs, carrying us throughout the American Athletic Conference tournament. It is Let's Rage Coogs presented by the Saxenian family, wherever you may be listening. However, you may be listening, for those of you tuning in live, be sure to check out in the comments. Let us know what you thought about Houston's big win over Norfolk State, but also our other sponsors. First and foremost, Houston and the Micro Collective Hoop and Holler. They have been a big sponsor of Let's Reach Cougs throughout, on back to the football season and now into the basketball season. Hoop and Holler, the Houston Cougars Micro Collective, they are the entity behind the Star Pizza commercials, who is another sponsor of today's episode of Let's Rage Cougs, presented by the Saxenian Family. Star Pizza, Houston's best pizza since 1976. Also want to give a big shout out to BB's, the home of Tex Orleans Cookie. They are another sponsor of Let's Rage Cougs, presented by the Saxenian Family. BB's, be sure to follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at BB's Tex Orleans. That's at BB's Tex Orleans. And last but not least, I do want to give a big shout out to the Fritz Kennel. They are a family owned and operated business that specializes in dog and cat boarding, daycare, and bathing. If you are going out of town and need a home for your furry friend, be sure to check out our guys at the Fritz Kennel. Whenever you stop by at any of these local businesses, be sure to tell them that Let's Rage Coogs sent you by, and be sure to, this is a partnership with all of our sponsors, be sure to tell them that you heard about them on Let's Rage Coogs. Once again, Let's Rage Coogs, presented by the Saxenian Family. Now, before I do toss it over to Kelvin, I do want to get your thoughts, Kris and Da'Yon, some of the things he touched on. Something that really he said after the practice, or not after the practice, after the game on Saturday against Kent State, where they really didn't have that opportunity, Kris, you alluded to practice following the Oregon game during that Thanksgiving week, because of the illnesses, the sickness that they had to deal with. I mean, there were players that were down left and right. Jamal Shed, Reggie Chaney, like you alluded to, Kris. Ramon Walker wasn't on the floor for Houston. I don't think he was at the stadium.
He's still sick.
Dealing
He's still
with that sickness. And Kelvin Sampson said that he told them to stay away from the program until he's feeling 100%. But that's something that really affected them. It didn't allow them to get a lot of practice done, what Kelvin said, and they got the opportunity to have back-to-back practices on Sunday and Monday, and they made the best of it, and it looked like they were able to make the best of it from those practices. And Kelvin Sampson said the emphasis throughout those two practices was on offense, and really he said the emphasis on Tuesday night, was body movement, ball movement, and execution. He felt that this past Saturday against Kent State, it was a lot more of isolation ball for Houston, which he said at times they might need isolation to win ball games, but against Kent State, they really struggled to be able to do that. Today, a lot more ball movement, like alluded to, 26 assists to those 38 made field goals. It just seemed like like Kelvin himself said, the offense looked much more crisp, and from the jump, they were just hitting all their shots, which is a bad bonus. There's not going to be a lot of teams in the country that can beat Houston, certainly compete with Houston when they're hitting their shots like they did today, shooting over 50% from the field.
Cougs made 10 threes in the first half. Okay. Not many of us expect that, okay, from the Cougs, but 10 threes in the first half out of 18 attempts. So when the shots are falling, when the ball is moving around and the bodies are moving, it's not just standing still. It's much of a flowing off, a rhythm to the offense. Da'Yon likes to use the rhythm comment. They had much more rhythm, a better rhythm tonight, and it showed they're much more effective. They had 5 guys scoring double digits. Jarace Walker was next with 9 points, 8 rebounds. He was healthy. Coach mentioned to us that Jarace is dealing with like a strain, a hamstring strain, something like that. And he said that he really shouldn't have played Jarace Saturday because Jarace just wasn't filling up to, he thought. But Jarace said he wanted to play and give it a go. But we saw that Jarace was not explosive. And the Jarace that we're used to seeing in his young career here so far at Houston, he was better tonight. Everybody played well tonight. So, what we saw, getting back to Ramon being sick, that's why Emmanuel Sharp got minutes early in the first half, because Ramon wasn't there. Those minutes would have gone to Ramon. And then on the stretch, you saw Jamal Shed on the floor because he didn't have another guard. He did not have Ramon to take out Jamal and let Ramon close out the game. So you'll see how important a healthy backcourt is to this team.
Yeah, definitely, for sure, and definitely about the rhythm. That was the main thing. They played in a good flow and a good rhythm throughout the game, and especially Jamal. He started it off when his jumper was falling, and that's another thing because he was kind of off and on throughout the first couple of games. Today he was efficient. He made his first three. No, he made it. I think his
Four
first
for
three.
4 for 3. 4 for
Okay,
4, perfect. Yeah.
yeah, 4. Okay, man, and of course it was playmaking. So I think he's very important. He's really, in my opinion, one of our irreplaceable players this year. I think he's one of we're gonna go as far as that he gonna take us. Him and Marcus, and like Coach Sampson, and like Andy just said, Coach, we need somebody that's gonna isolate, and that's to close games,
Mm-hmm.
like Marcus, and he can do that. And so, man, I can't. It's just pure domination. Everybody played well. Everybody shined. Everybody. It really looked like an exhibition game, honestly.
Yeah, at
And,
times it
at
did.
times it did, yeah. And Norfolk State is a solid team. Okay, they're not
They
as good
played
as Kent State.
they played
Okay,
Baylor and UCLA.
I know. I saw the
yeah,
same, but the same results though.
they were
They played Baylor a little tougher.
they were closer to with
Yeah,
Baylor to like the
but they got to be
last
about 20.
7-10 minutes of that game.
17.
You know,
17. Wow,
so
17. Okay.
that game was more competitive a little bit longer than this one was tonight. But they're not Kent State. But the way the Cougs shot the ball tonight, I'm not sure if Norfolk State would have, if it made any difference what they did tonight. But just one of those nights, just like Saturday, just one of those games. Matchups is all part of sports. And the Cougs had it rolling tonight, and Norfolk State just got in the way. But let's talk about JVA Francis. Go ahead. What are we going to say, Da'Yon? Go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna add, just thinking about, can we get the home crowd? I think it was the home effect too. Home court number one, like everybody was hyped, and I think really it made me think about when the tough teams we got coming in, and can our home court advantage be really, really good like that? And can we really play this well? We might not shoot this well every time, but can we really play this well and be tough to beat at home and win our home games, especially the ones coming up?
Yeah, yeah, Andy. I don't know the order, the sequence you want to play the clips, but Tremont and Marcus said post
They
game
talked about that.
they talked about the fan support, the fan base, and the
Every time it seems like I'm there.
No, yeah, and you beat us to it. I guess we might as well just segue into that clip, and then we'll change things up. We'll save Kelvin Sampson for last. But before we do, I'd like to remind everyone, whether you may be wherever you may be listening, however you may be watching, whether it's live or on the playback audio only versions on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and wherever else you listen to your podcast, you are listening to Let's Rage Coogs, presented by the Saxenian Family, the primary sponsor of Let's Rage Coogs, carrying us through the American Athletic Conference tournament. And we also want to give a shout out to our sponsor role. I gave this a nickname. This is gonna be sponsor role now. I know you have a media role, you have radio role whenever the Super Bowl is in town. This is sponsor role for Let's Rage Cougs. We're not doing as much raging as we did on Saturday night. That's something that Brian of Go Cougs started with raging, but this is Let's Rage Cougs, and we do want to give a shout out to our sponsors, and we'll start with the Fritz Kennel. This time, a family owned and operated business that specializes in dog and cat boarding, daycares, and bathing. If you're going out of town and need a home for your furry friend, be sure to make it the Fritz Kennel. Once again, the family-owned business located at 9513 Yuppendale Drive in Houston, Texas. A big shout-out to BB's, the home of Tex Orleans Cooking. BB's, another sponsor of Let's Reach Cougs. Be sure to follow them on social media at BB's Tex Orleans. That's at BB's Tex Orleans on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And last but not least, the Coop and Holler, the Houston Cougars Micro Collective. They are the entity behind the D'Anthony Jones Sac Ave commercials, Four Star Pizza. They've had a whole bunch of different commercials in the past, including Hawk. So kind of segue into our final sponsor, Star Pizza, Houston's best pizza since 1976. And on that note, I'll toss it over to Marcus Sasser post-game. Talked about various things, including just the offense overall, what he from his perspective, how he felt the offense gelled well against Norfolk State. He talked a little bit about seeing a couple of shots go in for him, and then he capped it off with talking about the crowd atmosphere. And you'll hear Tremont Mark talking about the crowd as well.
I said earlier, we worked on our offense a lot the last 2 practices, so just being in the right spots really, and I think Jamal, Tremont, Juan, and Jarace did a good job, not trying to force anything, make singles. I think just knocking down the open shots. So I think that's
come off the game that there were things that were part of Saturday's performance, but was it nice to be able to come out and have those shots fall? Maybe
Yeah, just to give me like a little confidence boost. Just I feel like I've been taking a lot of good shots, but just not seeing them fall. You ain't gonna make every one, but like you said, it was good for me to see shots fall tonight. To have momentum into going into the next game.
This year, just for a Tuesday night crowd, coming in number 1, what do you think about that and just how they energize y'all?
Yeah, I want to give them a big thanks for sure. I feel like this year they stepped up big time. Just being there, I feel like it's been a real home court advantage a little bit. They got us going, especially that Saturday game. That was Saturday, huh? We played Kent State. Yeah, especially that game. They was just there. We feed off them, so I give a big thanks to them and the band.
Yeah, I'll give a big shout out to the fan base too, because without them, we wouldn't be where we are right now. Our fan base they got us through that Kent State win for sure, so just a big shout out to them. We appreciate them.
So there you had it. You heard from Marcus Sasser and Tremont Mark. I mean, where do you guys want to start? Do you want to start with the offense that Marcus Sasser talked, or that atmosphere? I mean, you know what? Let's just start with that atmosphere, because we were talking about it before we led into those clips, and Tremont Mark himself, he hit it right there. He said the crowd really gave the team a boost on Saturday, especially after they got down by 10 points early. Every time Houston made a rally, that crowd got up, and they really did provide a boost for that Houston offense, because whenever they finally were able to get over the hump, take the lead multiple times, including in the second half when they went on that 15-0 run, the crowd, for that point, that was the loudest I had heard it all season. I think Ryan Elvin's shots tonight might have topped that, and
Yeah.
I'm not exaggerating at that. I feel like that those two might be the loudest points for Cheetah Center has been so far this season. But they certainly, Marcus Sasser in the clip, he said he feels that the crowd has stepped up so far this season, and it's an impact, and it's a noticeable impact, because Kelvin Sampson gave the same thing. He had high praise for the crowd just a few days ago during his Zoom availability with reporters.
I'm not yet. Well, yeah, I am. The atmosphere inside Fertitta Center is just way, way better than across the street at TDECU Stadium. Okay, so the fans, basketball fans, are hyped. They're excited. They got a team that's got them hyped. Football team doesn't have them hyped. So you can take the comparison right there, and I'll leave it at that. But yeah, the fans were still dealing with traffic, construction, all those things, but they were here and they were loud. So it's better in a November than it probably has been recent November. So that's a good sign. And then going forward, I'm looking forward to that game on the 10th of December against Alabama, 2:00 Saturday afternoon, ABC. This place should be just rocking. So I'm looking forward to that, man.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. And that's what it seemed like. I haven't been there, so I got to lean on you guys and live through y'all. But I just can tell that it seemed like that way on TV. And I've been in the Fertitta Center at its peak when it's been rocking, and I know what it can be. And so it's good to see that, and it's good to hear that you guys kind of confirm what I'm seeing.
And Andy, want to get your thoughts on it as well. The Cougs are number 1 now. They may not be number 1 for the whole season. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that's going to matter to the fans. The fans love this team. They love this program, and as John Lynn comments, this team, they believe in this team. This team gives them hope of what could be. It's hard to win a championship in college basketball because it's one and done tournament style. But fans believe this team has a chance to compete for a championship this year. So they are hype. for home games this season, and we're just going to enjoy the ride.
And it means something being number one to fans. That's what I told Andy. Mostly, it means something for fans.
Yeah,
I think
you know,
it's
it's
gonna
something to hang your hat on. Yeah,
be every game from here on out because we always gonna be, whether if we do lose a game and we will never drop probably outside the top 10.
yeah. I
So we're
mean,
gonna be
it'd
in
be
the top 10, probably within the top 5 all year. And so, but it means something to being number one. So I expect the crowd to be what I'm hearing you guys confirming and what it should be.
yeah. King's comment. Yeah, I gotta say, the game day experience when ESPN was here, and then UCF won the game. That crowd was something else, man. That was something else. But Alabama on December 10th,
That's gonna be
I'm not
that's gonna
telling
be
Lauren Sampson how to do her job, but that week prior to that game, they need to play the clip, the goaltending call, non-call, whatever, over and over and over, because the fans still talk about that. I'm not worried I'm not talking about the players, coaches, none of that. I'm talking about the fans have not forgotten that. So they are going to be hyped, super hyped, overhyped for that, because they feel like the refs took that game from their Cougars.
Yeah, absolutely, and a potential with how high ranked. Obviously, we know where Houston is, but Alabama, they're going to have a couple of. By the way, you know what? Let me check the outcome of the game. But that's going to be the game, like you mentioned, Kris, that fans have had scheduled since the non-conference schedule came out. By the way, Virginia just came back and rallied, and they tied the game currently with Michigan. That game's tied at 65, so that's going to be an interesting game down the road as well. December 17th, when Houston has to go up there and face off against Cavaliers. But that other part of the clip from Marcus Sasser, we're talking about the offense, in particular, he kind of alluded to. We're gonna hear from Kelvin Sampson in a second, but again, he kind of alluded to that's the emphasis that they had on practice. He just felt overall the team was just in the right spots, and they did a much better job at being able to pass the ball. And then obviously the biggest thing is that the shots fell, so that's why the offense looked just as good. But I think overall, what are your guys' thoughts on what Marcus Sasser had to say about what he saw from the team's offense?
Well, I want to add this so Dan can comment on this, because, being out of town, he didn't hear it. But Coach Sampson is candid as always. But one of his comments was they have not spent a lot of time on offense so far this season. So the Cougar defense, rebounding, the culture part of it, that's who they are. So these last 2 days of practice, they spent more time on offense. Most times they probably spent so far this season. So we saw a result of the practice spent on offense, more flow, more rhythm. So I think that's helped, and then that's going to continue to help the offense improve as this season progresses, because everybody expects the defense is a constant. Just got to get the offense to continue getting better, and then if it's as good as the defense, look out.
And also, I think we did a great job of playing in transition. Another thing, Coach Sampson mentioned that he wanted to do better, and I think they did a better job of that tonight, playing in transition and not playing in a half court so much. Because once they got in transition, they moved the ball, and that's when they got a lot of open looks. And also, Jamal controlled the pace of the game. I think when it was time to get out in the fast court, he pushed the pace, and it was time to slow it down and get into one of their sets. They executed, and so it was just one of those games, a statement game. I feel like
They just turned off the lights for you, Kris.
Deserved to be number one.
I don't know what's up with that. I mean, they say I'm sitting here, put the lights off, turn the lights off behind me and everything. Man, oh man, we're not here any later than we've been before so far this season. So I don't know what the deal is, but I'm just got more shine to my shiny bald head. That's okay.
We need to figure out a way to adjust brightness. I don't know if StreamYard has that, but that's interesting. Dan, to your point in regards to Jamal Shed, that he honestly kind of had a bit of an underrated game. He finished with a double-double, but like you said, being able to control the tempo for Houston, be able to really create a lot for Houston. He finished with 12 points. He hit all 4 of his threes. And interesting that all the shots he took were 3. He took 4 threes. He made all 4. That's all he shot on the night. He also had 11 assists for that double-double. He only had 3 turnovers, which, again, a decrease from what you saw Saturday night against Kent State. But overall, Kris, I'm curious to get your thoughts on what you saw from Shed, and a bit of an injury scare that he had too when he had to limp off towards the middle of the second half towards the bench. He came back and played later on in the game and actually finished the game on the court, which, again, something Sampson said really, and it was in part, is how the team has been affected by the illness, because since they did not have Ramon Walker, he had to keep Jamal Shed in the game late.
And Jamal was battling leg cramps. I think Jarace had a little leg strain, something as well in the second half. So that was a concern, no Ramon. So that's why Jamal finished the game. And Jamal had a shoulder issue last week and being sick. So they're dealing with stuff right now. Better to have it happen in November than April or March. So let's get it out the way. The Cougars have been working on zone offenses and utilizing zone defense. Something Coach said today, he mentioned to us after the game, that they implemented a little zone defense themselves for the first time this season, but for the first time since their road game against Wichita State last year. They went to zone, and that game there was a classic. But Coach is trying to.
Next time they turned off
spotlight. Now they got everything, so I think it's on a timer or something, because everybody's in the dark now.
Well, but hey, we have our own lights here.
So I'm in a spotlight, so right here.
They're back. Okay. They're back on. I don't know what's going on. We're having
live streaming here inside Theater Center. Cleaning crews here, but somebody else is turning off the lights around us. So, but the Cougs work. I think, I don't know what clip you're going to play, Andy, but one thing Coach Sampson mentioned is they worked more in the ball movement, player movement. There's zone offense, much crisper, better passing. He said when Norfolk went to that zone tonight, we were ready for it, and they sure were.
Absolutely. And on that note, before we segue and hear what Kelvin Sampson had to say, once again, a reminder, you are watching and or listening, wherever you may be listening, however you may be doing so, whether live or after you're listening to Let's Rage Coogs, presented by the Saxenian Family. The Saxenian Family, the primary sponsor of Let's Rage Coogs for the remainder of the regular season and into the American Athletic Conference tournament. Once again, you are listening or watching to Let's Rage Coogs, presented by the Saxenian Family. And as I segue over to sponsor role, once again, big shout out to all our sponsors, starting with Hoop and Holla, the Houston Cougars Sports Micro Collective. They are the entity behind D-Star Pizza Commercials, who, as the lights dim again inside the Fertitta Center, and completely go dark after that. Star Pizza, Houston's best pizza since 1976. Also want to give a huge shout out to BB's, the home of Tex Orleans Cooking. BB's multiple locations scattered across the Houston area. Now they're just playing with us with the lights. They're just turning it on and off. BB's, multiple locations across the Houston area. I'm sure if you are watching the show, have tuned in. You guys are aware of the cool name, image, and likeness deal that they had with the men's basketball team a few days ago, where multiple players scattered across the different locations across the Houston area were able to go in and just have a good time at various restaurants. Be sure to follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at BB's Tex Orleans. That's at BB's Tex Orleans. And last but not least, a big shout out to the Fritz Kennel, the family-owned and operated business that specializes in dog and cat boarding, daycare, and bathing. If you are going out of town and need a home for your furry friend, be sure to make it the Fritz Kennel, located at 9513 Yup and Dell Drive, Houston, Texas. If you want to reach out to them, do so at 713-464-9852. And before they turn off the lights again, here's what head coach Kelvin Sampson had to say post-game following Houston's 100-52 victory over Norfolk State.
I mean, I see that every day, so that's our culture. Could have been scripted better. Great hustle play and unselfish play to finish. That's our kids. That's the way we practice. We got to move forward. There's some accountability for those kind of plays. We've been doing that for a long time around here. It didn't start this year or last year. We've been doing that for a long time.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Kelvin, the things from Saturday that you had wanted to address, turnovers were down, the shooting was up. You know, just
Well, the biggest thing is we got to practice. And that was this bad offensive performance. I didn't get mad at him about that. I mean, we didn't practice. Jarace, hurt his hamstring, and that was a good team. Everybody wants to compare scores. I know how good Kent State was. I watched Portland. Portland could have easily beat Michigan State. Could have easily beat North Carolina. Kent State beat them by 20, beat Portland. So we knew that. But the whole week was thrown off for us, and that doesn't take anything away from Kent State. Kent State's, was going to win 20-some games to be an NCAA tournament team. But we were stagnant. We weren't moving. The ball wasn't moving, and that's not who we are. We're better than that. But I knew that our defense is always ahead of our offense early in the season. Always has been. Right? But I never worry about our offense because I know that once we start working on things, like tonight, as soon as they popped in that zone, we were crisp. We knew exactly where the ball was going. The ball moved. We got inside out. The ball got reversed. We made extra passes. Well, we practiced that all week. Man to man, every time the ball moved, somebody else moved. That's why we have so many assists tonight. Saturday, we were basically an ISO team, and we're no good being an ISO team. Now, there'll be games when we have to ISO, but tonight the emphasis was on ball movement, body movement, and execution. So it was nice to see the ball go in. Marcus has been taking mostly good shots. He's forced some. But tonight, I just thought his efficiency. But the guy that got us going early was Jamal. Jamal is, you forget he didn't play last year. He was a freshman the year before, so it's not like he's a seasoned veteran. He's not a veteran. Marcus is a veteran, but Jamal is not. That's why Jamal's best basketball is way ahead of him. But we got some good practice in. Even though it was a quick turnaround, but Sunday we worked on our. I'm not going to give you any of the trade secrets, but we have calls for stuff, terminology for stuff. And so we worked on offense. It's probably the first time all year that's all we did was work on offense. Usually we're so defense dominant, but last 2 days we were offense dominant.
Last 2 days, they were offense dominant. I think something that it wasn't on that clip, but he kind of alluded to it, reminded me when he was talking about Marcus Sasser and really how he needed to see the ball go in there. That helped him first confidence. He also talked about how he gives a lot of his best players freedom on that offensive end. But he did say he the moment he starts seeing that they get selfish with it, he'll be
abuse it.
That they abuse it. He'll be quick to reel it back in and shut it down. But again, that just goes to show it's interesting just from hearing that clip that he says that the emphasis went off on offense, which he said that early on, if you try to focus on too many things as a team, you're never going to be good at one thing. So he likes to focus specifically on defense and just their identity, their culture, making all those hustle plays, which at the beginning of that clip, he was alluding to one play in particular when Marcus Sasser kind of forced the ball loose. It was a loose ball. Reggie Chaney kind of fell on the floor trying to get the ball, and then Tremont Mark dived, and he actually was the one that got the ball, got it to Jawan Roberts, and he had the slam dunk, which at least at that point of the game, that was another one of the moments where Fertitta Center crowd got really, really loud. And, that just goes to show the type of fan base that Houston has. The most energized they are, not counting the Ryan Elvin moments, like during the game, the most loudest that they got was when they see those type of culture plays. When you see players diving on the floor, hitting the hardwood, that's really when the Fertitta Center gets loud. We saw it again just a few days ago on Saturday night or Saturday afternoon against Kent State.
Fans, and just saw the 66 H-Town comment, they love this team's heart, grit, hustle, and this is the culture that Coach Sampson and his staff have established, created, built. This is what they're known for. We talked about it on the football version of Let's Rage Coogs. What is the culture of the football team? What are they known for? But we know what the basketball culture is. We know what it is, and there's no question what it is. So,
It's a non-negotiable for Houston.
yeah, in your comment about coach gives some of his players, his best players, freedom, but if they abuse it, he'll take it from them, and that's non-negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he holds everybody accountable. Everybody has their roles, but if you step out of your role and become selfish, Coach Sampson is going to put you in place and remind you of your role on this team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about. Remember when I said last week I wanted to see Tremont be more aggressive, and that's what I was glad to see that tonight. He was aggressive, and he's been hitting his three pretty much all year, but he was hitting it. He hit the first three. Remember last game that got him going. Then Marcus came down and hit a three, and they kind of closed it off. But tonight he hit his first one, and he was aggressive because he really can score. I mean, he really can score. And so him getting more aggressive, getting more experience, like Coach Sampson mentioned, getting in more rhythm. I think his best. But just like Coach Sampson said, everything he said, that's what I was really good to hear, glad to hear about Tremont Mark because he can be special. I think he has the potential to be special when he finishes developing and leave out of Houston.
And I think the players individually are trying to figure out when to be aggressive because Tremont, out of these first 7 games, I think he's been aggressive 2 or 3 games.
Yeah.
Jarace, 2 or 3 games. So, Marcus,
But
everybody's
it's
trying to
all
figure everything
in the
out.
rhythm though, because you look at the number of shots; they're all
Mhm.
getting their shots, and they do a good job of riding the high hand.
Yes.
And so, if somebody is making their shots, then they're gonna keep calling six to get him the ball until. But tonight, it's like okay, he making his, everybody making, so everybody's eating. But on a
Yeah.
given night, if Jared's make his first couple of attempts, then we'll keep feeding him and keep feeding him with anyone. And so I think that's another thing that makes Coach Sampson and the staff great. Like once you hot, no matter who you are, if you're a bench player like Terrence when he came in get in Oregon and he was hot, we
Yeah.
rode him until as long. You know what I'm saying? So,
And at some points, coach has said it to anyone who's listening, follow the program. He doesn't overthink it. Like Da'Yon says, if it got a hot hand, we can call a same play
yeah.
until that hot hand cools off and he'll go to something else. But don't overthink it. Sometimes basketball is very simple. The game will dictate what you can do and what works for you. And then as long as it's working, let it ride.
Absolutely. And on that note, I do like to remind everyone watching and or listening that they are tuning in to Let's Rage Coogs, presented by the Saxenian Family. Let's Rage Coogs, the unofficial postgame show for Houston men's basketball and football. I do want to mention a comment that this in and of itself, we could have a sponsored question of the show. And on this one, we just went with a generic question. Who was your guys' player of the game and why? Gardner says it was Jamal Shed. The way he was distributing the ball was amazing. Kind of reminded me a little bit of CP3 when he was with the Rockets, which, Da'Yon, I know you like that Chris Paul comparison for Jamal Shed. 66 H-Town says Tremont Mark because he was aggressive, or Sasser, Marcus Sasser, because he found his shot. So once again, that is our question for the show. Who was your guys' player of the game and why? We love to hear your guys' comments. And on that note, I do want to give one more acknowledgement to our sponsor role, starting with Hoop and Hollers Houston Cougars Micro Collective. They are the entity behind the Star Pizza commercials, such as the Anthony Jones Sackaf commercial. Star Pizza, another one of our sponsors for today's episode of Let's Rage Coogs, presented by the Saxenian Family. Star Pizza, Houston's best pizza since 1976. Big shout out to our other sponsor, the Fritz Kennel, the family-owned and operated business that specializes in dog and cat boarding, daycare, and bathing. The Fritz Kennel. If you're going out of town and need a home for your fur friend, make sure it's our guys at the Fritz Kennel. And last but not least, BB's, the home of Tex Orland's Cooking, with multiple locations across the Houston area. Be sure to visit at any one of their locations. Be sure to give them a follow on social media at BB's Tex Orleans on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. That's at BB's Tex Orleans on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. On that note, the one player that we haven't spoke about, I guess we haven't really spoke about two, and they're both forwards, and we kind of mentioned it. It seemed like we were going to allude to JVA Francis, but Kelvin Sampson, once again, he kind of reiterated. He had the high remarks for JVA Francis, and I think this is interesting. Kelvin kind of peeled back a little bit more of the layer in terms of the where Houston was in the offseason. He alluded to the transfer portal and where the team was. They were really focusing on bringing in another front court player from that transfer portal. Kris, I know there was a lot of rumors on who exactly that player would be. He's currently at the next level now, playing in the NBA. And he's been dominating. He's had some impressive moments in the NBA, but he kind of doubled down on JVA Francis, and it's funny because he mentioned the transfer portal in terms of what Houston was looking at, but then he also mentioned why it's important. Now, I didn't know this, JVA Francis is only 19 years old, and they said that he had just turned 19, so he is
like
extremely...
few weeks or in October, yeah.
He is extremely young, but he went on and said, this is a very important year for JVA because he needed to get on the court and get that experience through by, actually playing, by getting put through the fire. That's something that he didn't get a lot of chance last season when he would see the court. It wouldn't be during stretches like we have seen during this season. He's not been relied on for long stretches, but he has shown flashes, and he is playing a much more significant, a much more consistent role for the Houston Cougars this season. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on what you guys saw from JVA Francis in this game. He finished with, he got in double figures. He had 11 points, 8 rebounds. It seems like he's on fast track. He always seems to be finding a way to impact the game with those impact winning plays. In particular, I know Houston head coach Kelvin Sampson, what he really loves is that rebounding stat.
Well, let's not forget, not too long ago, Coach Sampson made the comment that his wife, Karen, had the same number of rebounds as JVA Francis in the game against Oregon. Okay, so that was JVA's bad game. So he's still young, basically a freshman, so up and down. He's not consistent, good. But tonight, he played very well. Level of competition, he's better than Norfolk State players. Okay, so as he gets better and more consistent, let's see what he does against better talent, more talented big men. His potential is off the charts because we've seen him in practice working with his post moves, and his post moves, coach touched on it tonight as well. He can score on the block with his left or right hand. So not many big men can do that. He just got to do it consistently. The effort, rebounding is effort. Okay, it's not just a question of how tall you are. It's effort. So for a big man in a Coug uniform to get 0 rebounds, that's a problem. So he's been better since then. And I doubt if we'll see him play 7 minutes or more and not get a rebound in a game the rest of this season.
And to add on to your point, Kris, before I toss it over to you, Da'Yon, kind of the similar thing that Kelvin said about Jarace a few games ago when he was talking about, again, adding to your point about consistency and going back to that tic-tac-toe analogy where they need to start stringing together a series of O's and a series of X's. That's where JVA Francis, again, I didn't know he had barely turned 19 years old. He falls into that category of, he's technically not a freshman, but when it comes to experience-wise, he certainly is in that freshman category.
Yeah, and I think the main thing for him is getting experience. I think all of it is good experience, and like Kris mentioned, you see the potential. So as he gains more experience and then get confidence within that experience, pick his spots, you see the potential, and then you just let it blossom, let it continue to develop. And so I really like what I was seeing against him. Like Kris said, he was bigger and better than the big man against Norfolk State.
But go ahead, Dan, because when I say this, it's going to sound like I'm throwing a rock at folks, but
go ahead.
This is what is disappointing, that we can't show more content from Zoom calls, because Coach Sampson acknowledged that Reggie Chaney, I think it was your question, Andy, about Reggie Chaney, and how Reggie, as the leader of the front court, he works with JVA on what to expect, post moves and things like that. But in the program, Coach Sampson added, and next year it'll be JVA working with Jacob McFarland and big fella, what's Cedric Lott, because it's just part of what's expected in the Cougar program. You learn from the vets, Then it's when it's your time as a vet, you teach the young players the ways of the culture of the program. So that's just another little comment that we cannot all share because we're on restrictions. So
Yeah, and I mean, on that note, that's a good segue to for the people that are watching. Be sure to, Kris, as always, thank you for allowing us to use the Houston Roundball Review platform to be able to be the home of Let's Rage Coogs. But also be sure to follow us on Podslam Jamma, the Podslam Jamma YouTube account, where they can find that clip about Kelvin Sampson talking about Reggie Chaney. And like you said, that impact, it just goes back to that culture where one of the big emphasis, and there's so many emphases when it comes to the culture, but one of them is, and he alluded to in that clip that can be found on Potsdam Jamma, but he talked about how it's always important for the program to help the people behind you and get them caught up to speed. And like you said, that's what Reggie Chaney is doing specifically to JVA Francis on that. In that question, he also said, he leaned in, he heard them, they're always talking, and Reggie Chaney was coaching JVA Francis one of the times and talking about specific things. So that's something that, again, going back to culture of programs, identity of programs, it's players buying in. And again, thanks for putting that out there, Kris. It's a good segue to send people over to the Podslam Jamma YouTube channel if they haven't done so already. But real quickly, since it's in the comments and it's that game went final, future Houston opponent, number 3 Virginia, came back and they defeated Michigan 70-68. Final is the score there, so they got another win. They are now also 7-0, same mark as Houston. So it's interesting to see. You know what? I'm gonna start doing across the maybe I'll add that down the road, across the conference, across the country scoreboards. But Virginia did outlast Michigan, and they came back to win. I think what was the day on? They were down 6 in the second half, in the closing winning moments of the second half. But on that note, focusing back to Houston, the final player that we haven't really touched on, that's Jarace Walker, who, I mean, he had 9 points, he had 8 rebounds. Curious to get your guys' thoughts on Jarace Walker's performance overall. He had 3 turnovers as well.
He just seemed more comfortable. He seemed healthier, and I think that's the key. We're seeing the rebounding numbers was better. He didn't get a lot of shot attempts because it didn't need a lot of shot attempts. Everybody else had the offense, the rhythm flowing for them. But you can still see the flashes of his potential going forward if he's needed to be a threat offensively. We saw Da'Yon touched on it, I think, at the Saturday's game about we'd like to see him get more touches, mid-post and post. They did that a couple of times, but didn't do it a lot because it wasn't needed tonight. But his skill set is there. It's going to get better. And I think once he gets healthy, because we really don't know how, on a scale of 1 to 100, where he is on that scale for health. But he's doing what he can to help the team win. And once he gets healthy, knock on wood, and then we'll just add another bullet to the gun for the arsenal.
Yeah. To me, he also needs experience. Another young player that needs experience. And you, like Kris said, you see the potential. But I think he's learning how to play with Marcus and with Jamal and just with the team, with your mind, and picking and choosing in a college game on when to pick his spots, when to take over. And the Florida game was with the guards today. And so today he just rebound and make the plays that were there and he doesn't really force anything. And so I think this experience, every game experience is what he needs in big moments. And when he's having a big game and he can have a mismatch, I think he's going to dominate.
He took 1 3 tonight, didn't hesitate, and he made it. Previous game, fans were kind of, even coaches and teammates, shoot it, man. Don't think about it. Shoot it. You catch it, shoot it. No hesitation tonight from that 3, and he made it.
And as we start to wrap things up, I was able to pull together. We're gonna do this. I mean, we're gonna start doing this forward. The top 25 scoreboard. At least, obviously, we know
A lot of
Houston
work,
sitting
man.
at
That's a lot of work.
top 25 scoreboard only. We won't do across the country, and maybe we'll abandon it because there were a couple of shocking results at the very least.
Well, there was one for sure.
Yeah, which is the one I'm looking at, Kris, when I'm referring to. But obviously, start at the top. Number one, Houston. Say that again. Number one, Houston took care of business. They look like the number one team in the country tonight against Norfolk State. They beat them, obviously, of course, 100-52. We just mentioned number 3, Virginia knocked off Michigan 70-68. Number 16, Illinois, they routed Syracuse 73-44. Number 22, Maryland, they beat Louisville 79-54. Number 19, Kentucky, they won 60-41. And currently,
You
there's one.
you
No.
skipped over.
I'm
Okay,
not
okay.
skipping them. I'm
All
leaving
right.
them for last, Kris, because this is the surprising score. But San Diego State, number 24, San Diego State, they're currently in a battle with UC Irvine, who I know we mentioned it before. Houston headed over up to the Pacific Northwest when they were going to play Oregon. Looks like UC Irvine is legit this season. But the last game I saved is number 6 Baylor. God, they got routed by Marquette 96-70. And Kris, we were talking about it as that game was going on. Baylor, at least during that stretch, they were shooting the ball well from the floor. They were still losing by 20 plus points.
At halftime, they were down 25, I think, 24-25, and they shot 55% in the first half. And they were still down 20 plus points because of 16 turnovers were converted into 24 points. Man, so Coach Drew, and that's going to be a fun trip back to Waco.
Yeah, hard to win the game when we turn the ball over. Hard to win the game when we turn the ball over. It's only November. I'm shocked they get beat by that much, but that's a program with a good coach. And so I'm surprised you get beat. They got beat by that much, but I still think in the end they're gonna be contending, especially in the Big 12 tournament.
Oh yeah,
again,
bump in the road.
I mean, it just shows again what Houston was able to do this past Saturday. They had a lot of turnovers over their home on Saturday, which is a big reason why Kent State was competitive. Well, I mean, almost upset Houston when we were flat out.
23 Saturday, 9-9.
We do that against Alabama. But we're not gonna do that.
No, you're not going to beat Alabama.
Yeah.
You're not going to beat one of those top 25 teams committing that many turnovers. But as we wrap things up, we have thank you, Apollo, saying glad I was able to listen to the game on digital radio. No, oh no, Kris, no.
Yes, there it is. Andy Cam returns. Cougs win big. Not a coincidence. I told you in previous shows I was going to get you. Andy Cam was going to return. Got you tonight. Be ready going forward. It's just the beginning.
These skills, I have no idea how he got it. And you know what? I guess I might as well embrace it because I have no idea how he got it. First of all, I don't know what I'm doing with my eyes in that photo. What am I doing? I don't know why my eyes are squinting. It looks like I'm doing at something. And I can't believe I didn't see him. I can't believe I didn't see anyone taking a photo. Like, dang, I'm blind. But anyways, these skills, I'm gonna be on the lookout now. I gotta. I'm gonna
broaden my network. You're not gonna know who gets it. I'm gonna broaden the network. It's gonna be a thing.
I don't know what I was doing with my eyes. TI 7791 says, "Man, seeing the future." I can't remember that moment. I can't believe I couldn't see anyone taking photo, but that's funny. Disco's H-Town. It's a challenge. Now, one of these days, I'm going to catch you trying to take a photo. But as we wrap things up, Jerry 2968 said the entire team looked like they were running in the mud Saturday. It wasn't a shock when I heard they had a flu or a big a breakthrough go through the games. Breakthrough to the team in regards to the sickness, but overall, I'm gonna wrap it off with the question of the show: who's your guys' player of the game and why? We've had a couple of different answers: Jamal Shed, Marcus Sasser. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on who you guys felt was the player of the game. And Da'Yon, I'll go with you first.
I'm gonna go with Tremont Mark. I think he jump started, and not only did he make shots, he was efficient in shooting, and he also created well. Had 6 assists to go along with 6 rebounds. Remember the play where he was diving on the floor, getting the loose ball to J1, and that was early in the game. And so he still did the little things, the culture things as far as rebounding, everything, along with scoring and being aggressive and being efficient doing that. And he was able to play, make like I said. So I'm gonna go with Tremont Mark.
I'm going to go with Jamal Shed. The balanced offense, he helped contribute to that. When Marcus missed his first, I think, 2 or 3 threes, Jamal was one knocking down threes. Jamal and Tremont. And then Jamal ended up with 11 assists as well. So we can't go wrong tonight if you pick Tremont, Marcus, Jamal. Balanced scoring, 5 guys in double digits, a lot of assists, 26 assists. Was it 26 assists on 38 buckets?
And it's like, of course, we can pick Marcus, but I'm glad Marcus finally started making his jumper. But I didn't pick him because I expect him to do what he did tonight on a big stage. But we're gonna need other people which are Tremont and Jamal, to get to score like that consistently. I know they might not, everyone not gonna be as efficient as they were tonight, but still to be aggressive and like. But they're still an experience. It's still early in the year. But it's just good to see it tonight. For sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. I just want to bring up the comment by Ti 7791. He said Shed for me because if he of all people gets the outside shot going along with the usual skills, look out. Which Da'Yon, I know you've spoken on. If he can consistently knock down that 3-point, like I said today, he only took 4 shots. They were all threes, and he hit all 4 of them. That certainly adds a layer of versatility. Sorry, Kris, we both got distracted from that Hail Mary they're trying to do here. That certainly adds a layer of versatility to Houston's offense. And quite honestly, like we alluded to, on a night when Houston shoots as well as they did, there's not going to be a lot of teams in the country that can stick with Houston. And the big reason for that, it's not because of the offensive numbers themselves, it's because of their culture and their identity, because they're going to defend well and they're going to rebound well. And Kelvin Sampson's going to make sure that those are the priorities and the focus. But as we wrap things up, a big shout out to the sponsors once again: Hoop and Holler, Star Pizza, BB's, the Fritz Kennel. Thank you, each and every one of those sponsors, for being a part of the show. Once again, if you are watching, if you do go to any of these establishments, be sure to tell them that Let's Rage Coogs sent you. And again, it is a partnership, so be sure to support those guys because they support us, and it wouldn't be possible without them. And you're watching, listening to Let's Rage Coogs, presented by the Saxenian Family. The Saxenian Family, the primary sponsor of Let's Rage Coogs, which is the unofficial postgame show for Houston men's basketball and football. And the Saxenian Family will be the primary sponsor of Let's Rage Coogs, carrying us throughout the regular season and into the American Athletic Conference tournament with the men's basketball season. Once again, the final score: Houston defeats Norfolk State 100-52. Marcus Sasser led all scorers with 25 points, and Jamal Shed had 12 points, 11 assists for the double-double. Jamal Mark did a little bit of everything with 16 points, 6 assists, and 5 rebounds. So go around the table. Da'Yon, I'll go around the panel. We're not in a table present, but I'll go to you first. Where can people find you and your final takeaway, either of this game or where you're looking ahead Saturday when they play St. Mary's of the West Coast Conference?
Find me on all social media platforms at Da'Yon Dunlap. You can't see it because of the sponsors. But thank you to all the sponsors. And so on all social media forms at Da'Yon Dunlap. My takeaways of the game is we got it going. Shots, there may be unable to make shots, and I think that's good for the team that's going forward. And looking forward to St. Mary's, I can't wait. That's a really good team, a better competition. I want to see Jamal Shed and the entire team continue to make shots, because if they can make shots and open the floor for the big man and for himself to create for others, it's going to be hard to beat us.
Kris, where can people find you, and what is your biggest takeaway looking ahead?
HoustonRoundBallReview.com, Houston Roundball Review on Instagram and YouTube, Twitter, VHR Review. I'm putting it out there for you, Andy. If anybody joins us in Fort Worth at Dickies Arena, you are part of the Andy Cam crew. You see Andy at Dickies Arena, take that picture and put it on Twitter or send it to me. like I said, I'm expanding the crew. We are going to make Andy Cameron king this season. But takeaways for St. Mary's matchup at Dickies Arena in Fort Worth. I'm looking forward to style of play is going to be important. St. Mary's veteran team, experienced team. So I'm going to see how the Cougs handle that. A little bit of competition, bigger players. But we'll see how it goes because Cougs should win, but we'll see.
Absolutely. And on that note, I do want to give a shout out. Let me bring myself back on the screen there. Once again, the final score: Houston defeats Norfolk State 100-52. They will next get on the hardwood this upcoming Saturday, December 3, from Dickies Arena in Fort Worth. Which Dickies Arena, that's going to be the home of the American Athletic Conference tournament come March. So Houston fans are already really familiar with that arena after the last few seasons that the conference has hosted the championship tournament in that venue. But it'll be at 8:30 p.m. tip, so a little bit of a later tip. It'll be a return of Let's Rage Cougs After Dark on Saturday, and it's going to be Let's Rage Cougs from Fort Worth. At least in regards to Kris, you and me, we will be there. Da'Yon, we need to get you on board. We need to have a full show. And we said as possible we can all be on one screen together. Ryan Monceau and I did that. I couldn't really tell because of how terrible the Wi-Fi is, but it is possible to have everyone on the screen without being different panels. So, Kris, like you always said, onward and upward, and we are exactly doing that. For anyone that may be watching, may be interested in sponsoring Let's Rage Cougs presented by the Saxenian Family and joining sponsor role up here with our current sponsors, be sure to reach out at Let's Rage Cougs or email me at letsragecougs@gmail.com. There's not just the banners as you see on the screen. You can have if you have your own commercial and you like to play a commercial embedded into the show, we do that as well. You've seen that with the Sac Ave commercials for Star Pizza during the football season, live reads, sponsored segments, a whole lot of stuff we can do. Just reach out to me at letsragecougs@gmail.com. Be sure to follow us on social media as well, Instagram and TikTok. Let's Rage Cougs, obviously on Twitter at PodSlammaJamma. Be sure to follow the PodSlammaJamma YouTube channel. And this has been a presentation of Let's Rage Cougs, so that's going to do it for today's episode. We'll see you back on the road. Let's Rage Cougs After Dark, Saturday night in Fort Worth.